In the early 1800s, on the western coast of Greenland, a small northern city stood at the edge of the known world. It was built between ice, sea, and silence. European traders, missionaries, and Inuit families lived there together. Within a single generation, the city vanished beneath the ice. At the start of the 19th century, Greenland was not empty. Along its western coastline, scattered settlements formed a fragile chain between Europe and the Arctic interior. These were not cities in the modern sense, but organized communities. Wooden buildings, storehouses, a church, trade posts tied to Danish colonial administration. One such settlement stood near a fjord where the sea remained navigable longer than elsewhere. It became a hub. Locals called it home. Outsiders recorded it on maps. The settlement existed because of balance. Inuit hunters understood the ice. European traders understood ships and supply lines. Together, they relied on predictable seasons. Winter came early, but it always ended. Ice retreated. Ships returned. This rhythm defined survival. The early 1800s were a period of quiet expansion. Danish merchants increased their presence. Missionaries documented the population. Census records listed families, births, and deaths. Trade logs recorded seal oil, whale products, and furs. The city was small, but stable. Its buildings were reinforced against wind and snow. Streets were narrow, shaped by terrain rather than design. But the Arctic was changing. Climate records from Europe would later describe this era as part of the final phase of the Little Ice Age. Temperatures dropped slightly, but consistently. Winters extended. Summers shortened. Sea ice lingered longer each year. At first, the changes seemed manageable. Ships arrived later. Harvests were thinner. Hunting routes shifted. Then the ice stopped leaving. By the 1820s, pack ice blocked the fjord well into summer. Supply ships waited offshore for weeks. Sometimes they turned back. Food stores ran low. Wooden structures creaked under heavier snow loads. Dogs weakened. Sled routes became unreliable. Isolation grew slowly. No single disaster marked the beginning. Instead, communication faltered. Letters stopped arriving. Trade records became incomplete. The settlement still existed, but it was no longer connected. Local leaders faced decisions with limited information. Should families relocate south? Should they wait another year? Many stayed. Leaving meant abandoning homes, graves, and knowledge built over generations. Staying meant trusting that the ice would retreat, as it always had. It did not. By mid-century, maps still marked the city, but reports from passing expeditions described only silence. Smoke no longer rose from chimneys. No signals answered from shore. Snow covered rooftops year-round. What had once been a functioning Arctic settlement was becoming something else. A place no longer lived in. A place no longer remembered clearly. The disappearance of the northern city was not sudden. It unfolded through absence. Each year, fewer signs of life remained. Expeditions passing along the coast noted changes. Buildings partially collapsed. Doors frozen shut. Boats trapped in ice near the shore. By the 1840s, the settlement had effectively fallen off administrative records. No official evacuation was documented. No disaster report was filed. This absence itself became the mystery. Some theories emerged even at the time. Disease, starvation, migration. None could be confirmed. the environment erased evidence quickly. Snow-filled interiors. Ice-crushed walls. Organic materials disappeared under frost. Archaeological traces suggest that residents attempted to adapt. Additional insulation was added to structures. Stone reinforcements appeared around foundations. Hunting equipment was repaired repeatedly rather than replaced. These were signs of scarcity. The most critical failure was access. Sea ice blocked supply ships entirely in certain years. Without external goods, the settlement relied solely on local hunting. But animal patterns had shifted. Seal populations moved further offshore. Whale routes changed. What had once been sustainable became unpredictable. Written accounts from later explorers describe finding empty dwellings with everyday objects left behind. Utensils, tools, personal items. This suggested haste, but not panic. People likely left in stages. Small groups first. Others followed. Some may not have survived the journey. The ice was not merely cold. It was pressure. Glaciers advanced slowly, pushing toward the coast. Over decades, ice crept into the city's boundaries. Streets vanished. Foundations cracked. Snow accumulated faster than it melted. Eventually, buildings were entombed. By the late 1800s, the site was unrecognizable. Only irregular shapes beneath the ice hinted at human construction. Maps stopped marking the city entirely. New expeditions sailed past without knowing what lay beneath their hulls. Memory faded alongside evidence. Inuit oral histories referenced an old place swallowed by ice, but names differed. European records were incomplete. The settlement existed between documentation and legend. No rescue was mounted. No recovery attempted. The Arctic had many such lost points, and attention moved elsewhere. New routes. New goals. New failures. What remained was a silence deeper than abandonment. The city had not been destroyed by war or fire. It had been compressed. Preserved. Hidden. Ice does not erase quickly. It seals. By the middle of the 19th century, the fate of the northern city was no longer determined by decisions or mistakes. It was determined by time and ice. What had begun as a balanced settlement became an isolated outpost. What had been seasonal hardship became permanent enclosure. The same fjord that once connected the city to the world turned into a barrier. The same ice that sustained hunting began to restrict movement. Each earlier adaptation delayed collapse but could not prevent it. The settlement did not fail because of one event. It failed because conditions shifted faster than tradition could adjust. Trade routes dissolved. External contact weakened. Supplies stopped arriving. Knowledge that once ensured survival lost relevance as animal patterns and ice behavior changed. People responded gradually. Some families left first, moving south or inland. Others remained, trusting experience over uncertainty. Homes were reinforced. Tools were reused. Resources were stretched. These actions suggest endurance, not panic. But endurance required connection, and connection was gone. As the years passed, abandonment became structural. Empty houses filled with snow. Roofs sank under weight. Streets disappeared. The city lost its shape before it lost its name. By the time official records fell silent, the settlement had already become unreachable. The final stage came quietly. Glacial movement advanced. Ice compressed what remained. Buildings were sealed rather than destroyed. Objects were preserved where they lay. The settlement ceased to function as a human place and became part of the frozen terrain. There was no documented end. No final message. No marked evacuation. Only the absence of return. The city did not collapse in fire or flood. It closed slowly. Under pressure. Under silence. The northern city did not leave behind ruins that could be visited. It left behind a gap. After the ice closed over the settlement, nothing followed. No recovery. No return. The route along the fjord remained frozen for years. Later travelers passed without stopping. They saw only ice and coast. What lay beneath was no longer visible, and without visibility, it no longer demanded attention. Administration shifted south. Trade networks adjusted. New posts were built elsewhere. The name of the city disappeared from correspondence first. Then from maps. Finally, from memory. For those who once lived there, the ending came unevenly. Some carried fragments of the place with them. Stories. Skills. Names spoken only within families. Others did not leave at all. Their lives ended where they had begun, in a city that slowly closed around them. There were no markers. No graves exposed to the sky. Ice erased the distinction between the living and the left behind. Time continued, but the city did not. Seasons repeated above it. Snow layered over snow. Pressure increased. Wood darkened. Stone cracked. Objects remained where hands last set them down. A bowl. A tool. A doorway that never opened again. The Arctic is not loud when it erases. It does not announce loss. It absorbs. What is no longer used becomes part of the environment. What is no longer spoken becomes irrelevant. Later centuries searched for stories elsewhere. Explorers chased routes. Scientists measured glaciers. Historians followed written records. This city left too little behind. Its disappearance did not alter borders. It did not change policy. It did not fit into larger narratives of conquest or discovery. So it stayed buried. Not destroyed. Not preserved for display. Simply held. Under meters of ice, the shape of the settlement still exists. Lines where streets once ran. Angles where walls met. Evidence without voice. Structure without memory. The people are gone. The noise is gone. The reason to return is gone. Only the ice remains. And beneath it, a city that was once inhabited. Once recorded. Once real. Now silent. These stories are rarely told. Subscribe if you want to hear the next one.